Nick, this kind of came out of nowhere. We may have some news about the future of Zelda to a very abstract degree, perhaps. I wanted to bring you on to help me figure out what exactly series producer Eiji Aonuma meant by these latest comments from an interview with Japanese outlet 4Gamer, as translated by Video Games Chronicle, as I don't know what the takeaway we should have from this is. So let's get to the comments. So here's what Eiji Aonuma had to say, specifically stating that Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment is the first Zelda title on Nintendo Switch 2. To be honest, we wanted to be the ones to release the first one ourselves. So he's specifically saying, they beat us to the punch. They got Zelda game before we did ourselves, here at Nintendo. So I thought that was kind of funny. But this is where it gets interesting, because he continues, still, the inspiration we've gained from collaborating with Koei Tecmo like this may be reflected in the future or in the next Zelda we create. As you play Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, we hope you'll imagine these possibilities and look forward to our Zelda. So that's kind of wild to me, that he's already, one, talking about the next Zelda, and two, taking some inspiration from Age of Imprisonment. Now, Nick, I have to be honest with you, I have not played Age of Imprisonment. I'm not a huge Warriors guy.
Yeah.
I played a little bit of Hyrule Warriors, and not quite my style. So I wanted to bring you on, but I know you are a huge Warriors guy. You played through Age of Imprisonment, and I wanted to get your take on this. What do you think he means? Like, off the top of your head, what does this mean to you? Because I have my own ideas based on someone who hasn't played it, but you have. What do you think? What do you take away from this?
I think this is hopeful for me, and what it could possibly lead into the next Zelda game is that they lean a little bit more into the team aspect, or you playing alongside another character, and what that could mean in a million different directions. But if you look at Age of Imprisonment, they do a really good job at incorporating you alongside another character. And what I mean by that is they have these sync strike attacks, where if you fill up a bar, you walk over to another character and you do a powerful move that destroys hundreds of thousands of enemies on the screen at once. It is bombastic, it's over the top, it really feels like you're doing damage. And that's the thing where I think the previous Breath of the Wild or Teased of the Kingdom games kind of struggled at, is the combat. Even though it is enjoyable, it's nothing as rewarding or as fulfilling as something like a Warriors game, where even though those games are button mashy, it really feels like you're doing a lot of damage to a ton of different enemies. And that's the thing, if you look at Tears of the Kingdom, they do have some aspect of you working alongside the champions, their spirits, when you unlock them. But they're always out of the way. It's if you want to use one of their abilities, they might be on the other side of the map and you're running over to them and you might click the A button, but another one might pop in and you might be using the wrong ability at the wrong time. So yeah, I hope that's the direction they're kind of going in, is where it's you working alongside another character. And maybe that means multiplayer in the future. I don't know. Again, we really don't know what this comment means.
That's so interesting. So you immediately went to gameplay and more specifically combat for this, whereas my mind went to story. Because these games are more story-focused, too, in a sense, aren't they? In that there's, that clear progression throughout it. I mean, in a sense, it's funny in that, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're based on the famously open-air series, where you can do anything you want, but the stories in the Hyrule Warriors games are linear, aren't they? It's very much chapter by chapter, essentially, right?
Yeah, that's how it is. It's you fill out a point, you go on to the next or next match or whatever. You can do some side quests, but they don't really have any cutscenes or anything that impacts the overall progression of the story. But yeah, it say hey, go to here, do this, and then you get a cutscene, and then the story progresses forward again. And that could be the direction they're going in, right? Because if you look at Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I feel like you could play those games and miss majority of the cutscenes, right? They're optional. You go over here, you find the teardrop, or you find the cutscene over here. It's you really don't have to see those. So maybe that is the direction they're going in. It's hey, we're gonna make this more of a linear experience where everyone is gonna witness the story or experience the story the way we want them to, and not go at your own pace.
Completely out of order, right. Yeah, it's interesting because, the more I think on it, your initial takeaway does kind of make sense because, Nintendo is, by and large, gameplay first. That's the most important thing for them, and that's why your perspective makes sense. That would be the angle that Eiji Aonuma might go with. But then on the other hand, I'm well, they have the gameplay, largely figured out, which is why what element could they take from Hyrule Warriors that Zelda isn't currently delivering on, and that... I mean, obviously that's a subjective type thing.
Yeah.
I think many people think the story isn't quite there for the last two games, at least in a progressive sense or progression sense. And I do wonder maybe that could be where they dial it in on, where they do focus more on the story. Even though I do know from what I've heard, Age of Imprisonment does kind of like cover a lot of the same story beats as Tears of the Kingdom, right? Just in a kind of more fleshed out manner. Is that what it does?
So it does a better job compared to obviously like Age of Calamity, where it was a different timeline but within the same timeline.
Right.
And that was the thing. Like I was excited to see kind of like the downfall of everything before the lead up to Breath of the Wild. But they're like, oh, it's not really canon, but it is at the same time. But I'm pretty sure Age of Imprisonment is much more canon, or is actually canon. So yeah, there's a lot of story beats that you see going back and forth from Tears of the Kingdom to Age of Imprisonment.
Yeah, it's tough because for me at least, I love the open air style of gameplay. Even if I wasn't a huge fan of Tears of the Kingdom, like I do like the general idea of being able to do whatever you want at basically any time. But it does compromise on the story, you know, at least as they've done it so far. And I do wonder if there's a way to bring in aspects, such as from Age of Imprisonment, where you can deliver a more linear type of story within this open structure. Or maybe there's a way of finding a balance between the two. But then also in the gameplay sense, I hear what you're saying about the combat, and part of that does sound good. On the other hand, part of the reason why I don't play the Warriors games is I just don't like how they feel. I don't like that kind of, button mashy type of combat. But then on the other hand, I do have to concede that the scale of everything is amazing in those games, and maybe that is part of what the Zelda main series is missing. In that, it's funny in that the two open air style of games so far are taking place after all the interesting events happen, and I do wonder, maybe that's what he means. Maybe like you could have these larger scale battles, like maybe actually make it feel like an actual wartime, and that could be actually possibly awesome if there's a way to marry elements of that style of combat from Age of Imprisonment within the more open air style of gameplay from the mainline series. And do you think there's some kind of marriage there? I know you already mentioned like the teamwork mechanics, which Tears of the Kingdom did kind of like loosely dabble in, not especially well in my opinion, and I think you agreed. So do you think there's more they can do with that in a way to kind of bridge the gap between the two?
I think it's totally possible to do, especially because again, like with how open the games are, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are, I felt like just combat overall was just kind of lacking, right? Like I still enjoyed it, and I still had a good time with it, but I think the main gimmick or the main enjoyment of those games was just using those different powers or abilities that you had with your hand, with the Zonai devices and stuff like that. So yeah, so the combat and bringing it to like a larger scale, like come on, like that, I think that's kind of the way to go, especially when you have those larger battles in Breath of the Wild where you're fighting against like the Divine Beast, or you're trying to get to the Divine Beast. Like those are some of the biggest parts of those games. But when you compare it to an Age of Imprisonment or a Age of Calamity, like those, like again, those are the full-on war scenes that we haven't really seen in a mainline Zelda game, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, the more I think about this, the more, like, how epic would it be to see, like, I guess you've seen this because of the Warriors games, but within the context of, like, a mainline Zelda, seeing, like, a whole war break out, like, in the middle of Hyrule Field, that could be amazing, but it's like, how do you make that work with a conventional gameplay style of the Zelda series? And I don't know, I mean, I on the one hand, I almost think, do you have to go, like, more abstract with it in the sense that, like, maybe Link is kind of, like, directing, like, almost like a real-time strategy type thing? I mean, not to that degree, obviously, but maybe he takes more of a farther out view and he's kind of, like, directing, like,
I don't want to say legions or warriors, or he's commanding it. I was thinking Pikmin because that is Nintendo, but at the same time, it's not like a top-down RTS style.
But on the other hand, it's like, do I want that from Zelda? Like, I want to be in the action. I don't want to be removed from it. And, so I don't even know. Like, I guess even though we're discussing this, I don't know what these comments mean. Like, it could go in any number of directions, and I'm curious to find out. And I do wonder, like, how far they're even in the process of thinking about this. Like, on the one hand, it concerns me because it sounds like, that game just came out, Age of Imprisonment, and it's like, is this only now influencing the next game? Like, are they just now starting development? Whereas, Tears of the Kingdom came out, what, almost 3 years ago now?
2023 Tears of the Kingdom, I believe.
Yeah, it's almost 3 years ago, I believe. Early 2023, right? I think it was.
May, was it? I would say, it was right after the Mario movie, was it? I feel like.
But then again, the game has been in development for obviously some time. Yeah. And maybe they've been thinking about this for a while, and they already have a clear indication of where they want to go with the next Zelda, and maybe they've already incorporated those elements. So, yeah, I don't know what else to think. I mean, I do think, at the least, the next Zelda is going to have to change up to some degree. It can't take place in the same world again, I would hope.
I don't think so. This is like Age of Imprisonment is the fourth game in that kind of Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom era, and I think they really need to move on. And I hope the gameplay is drastically different from both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and I hope the art reflection or the art style reflects it as well.
Yeah, I don't want to go too much in the weeds on this, but I do kind of want to keep it focused on
Yeah.
the specific comments. But for me, I almost want the next Zelda to like rein it in a little bit. Like I loved having the amount of freedom we did, but on the other hand, you do kind of lose that sense of like slowly unlocking a world, or like, oh, I can actually do something now with this like new item I have or something, right? I do wonder if there's a way to marry those elements together, where you still have like the giant world, you can largely go where you want, but there's still areas where you need to kind of progress through the story or progress through at least an upgrade system in order to be able to access some parts. Like maybe reining in the amount of like stamina Link has. You can't just scale in the mountain like real easily. I don't know what that is. I don't know how that ties into Age of Imprisonment at all, or at least the gameplay ideas. But is there anything else we're missing here, Nick? Is there anything else from Age of Imprisonment that he could be alluding to, perhaps?
So the one other section that it could be possibly alluding to is just a completely different gameplay style. That being, again, we talked about it recently on our top game for 2025, is that having, eventually, some way through Age of Imprisonment, you get the flying mechanic. Or it's a completely different style from the main Warriors games where you're fighting on the ground, where this becomes more of like a bullet hell. So again, maybe that's a tease that he's alluding to, where it's like...
Are you saying we're getting Zelda Star Fox?
I mean, we already did in Age of Imprisonment, but I mean, if they want to take it that much further and have it be like the full-on gameplay, or have it be a gimmick in the next Zelda game, that could be something that he's alluding to as well. Because again, if you look at Age of Calamity, you get to play as the Divine Beast, which I don't think you've ever done anything to that scale in a Zelda game before. It's like these giant creatures, and it feels giant because like you're roaming over mountains, or you're destroying hundreds of enemies, as these Warriors games do. So maybe he is alluding to maybe something completely different in the style of how you control Link.
Yeah, I almost wonder if maybe scale is part of it. Like,
I didn't even think about that. Yeah,
and maybe you have more to say about this, or a different take on it. Because I will say one thing about the Hyrule Warriors style of games, or Age of Imprisonment, is in a sense, even though they're not open air by themselves in any stretch, I do think they almost take better advantage of what you can do in the world, at least in concept, like with these large scale battles, you being able to control the beasts, as you mentioned, which are all elements that like we didn't get in the previous games. Like, I thought it was such a missed opportunity that you can't control the divine beast that you spend all this time reclaiming or whatever, right? And I do wonder if maybe that is kind of like what he's alluding to, like the general, like I almost feel like, again, I had a lot of fun with Breath of the Wild and how big that world is, but I almost think they didn't really fully capitalize on having this giant world. Like, it exists more for the sake of being a big world and giving you a lot of things to do, but doesn't do a whole lot that especially takes advantage of that big world. There's like no giant scale boss fights. Again, the divine beats are just basically story beats. They're more like divine beats, divine story beats. And I do wonder, like, there's just more ways you can capitalize on like that, especially now with the power of the Switch 2, having his bespoke Zelda that takes advantage of it. Because he did, we're almost like, maybe we're almost brushing aside his joke about this being the first Zelda game on Switch 2, because they were able to take advantage of that power, and the next Zelda will be able to as well, because the Switch 2 editions obviously aren't fully capitalizing on that power. And I wonder what they can do now, having that enhanced power on this platform.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't think it's going to go into other like gimmick styles, right? Because Age of Imprisonment doesn't really harness any of those gimmicks from the Switch 2. Like, there's no mouse controls, there's no mouse features or anything like that. So again, like going back to your comment of having it being like a larger scale, I think that's something that you can directly take from the Warriors games, because again, it's these giant bombastic battles. They're on these large battlefields. There's hundreds of enemies that you're taking away or damaging, and that's something that the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom were missing. Like you said, the divine beasts are just there, and then they just sit there after you kind of like help them like get away from Ganon's, like, I guess, shackles or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, they built these giant, machines of war, and they just sit there like fucking stumps on a log, Like, what are you guys doing? Like, why can't I pilot this? Or like, let me at least aim the laser, like anything would have been better. And so I did think there was some missed potential there, and for any number of reasons, maybe even the limits of the Switch 1. But that would be, I think, I mean, what I do want, Nick, is, again, I touched on it earlier, the scale of the battle. Like, I don't know if I necessarily need to be a key component of that battle. Like, I almost sense, having with how OP you are in the Hyrule Warriors games, like I can't see that working within the context of a Zelda battle. But I do want to be within that battle, you know? Maybe Link has to like sneak his way through a giant battle to get through, you know, to get to Hyrule Castle or something, you know, or having him trying to survive within this massive outbreak of war. You know, something like that. I think that could be cool. Like, you know, where these different factions are going at it, and like Link's just a small component of it, at least, you know, within the context of just a surviving. And I don't know, I think there's so much more you could do there, and but you know, without having the combat of Hyrule Warriors, I just don't see that working in a story context. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm off base here, Nick, but
no, I don't think you are. Again, like he can go in so many other directions with this. This could be just a simple tease, and him just wanted to kind of get a joke out there how this is the first Zelda game on Switch 2. Again, like this game could have come out on Switch 1, but man, it would have not ran well at all.
Yeah.
So I'm happy this is the first Zelda game here on Switch 2.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what these comments mean, Nick, and whether it's going to be anytime soon or not. What's your expectation? Are we talking years out from now, or do you think there's something coming around the corner sooner than later?
I think years. I with how Nintendo's been working with some of their games and how I like how fast they are with announcement to release. I don't think they were gonna want to do another Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom where they announce it and we're waiting like 5 to 10 years for it. I think when they're ready to show it off, it's gonna come out fairly soon.
You know, I want to say you're right, but on the other hand, like I feel like we don't have that big title to look forward to.
We
right
don't.
Now. And I do wonder if Zelda might have to fulfill that again. That they'll have to show it off at some point just to give us like that, you know, that distant carrot. You know, like we know something's coming, right? Because right now we don't really know what's coming. I mean, there's a few games we know in the near future, but like we don't have that big one that we
don't.
Need, so
yeah. I guess here's a better question: do you think we'll get an announcement for the next mainline Zelda game before the Zelda movie or after the Zelda movie?
Oh, that's a good one. I would say I don't think we see it this year. I could see it around the time of the next Zelda movie, which would be 2027.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I could see it within that timeline that they announce it. Whether or not it's going to be released anytime soon after that, probably not. But yeah, I think that's when we see it. But I think they do want like, you know, I think they want to mark as much as they can around that time.
Yeah.
I mean, there also is a possibility that there is a new either spin-off or remake around that time too that they want to focus on, and that could also like let me put it this way: if they are doing like a remake of Ocarina of Time, they don't need anything else right now.
They don't.
That's your big one, right? So. And they would probably announce it around the time of the Zelda movie, or have it come out around the time of the Zelda movie, in which case they could announce it in 2026. So I don't know. I'm excited though. I do think there's gonna be something big for around the time of the Zelda movie because they want to promote something around, you know, to tie it into that. So
and we saw that with, I guess, the lead up to the new Mario movie, because with the first Mario movie, I don't think there was really any Mario synergy games around that time, but I think they kind of learned from that, and they're like, hey, we have at least the Switch 2 edition of Mario Bros. Or Mario Wonder.
Right.
And then they have the amiibos around that time for Mario Galaxy, but there's probably going to be some other Mario stuff. Again, they tied in Mario Tennis and then the Yoshi game to Mario for the 40th anniversary or 45th anniversary. I think, yeah, and then the Zelda anniversary is next year, right? So
that's right. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see, Nick. Any final thoughts at all before we wrap it up here?
No, I really hope that the next Zelda game, this is wishful thinking, and I don't think there's going to be any way this is possible, but I hope the next Zelda game at least has some form of co-op. Because there's always times where Natalie and I are playing Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. We're like, oh, I just wish I can play this with you or play alongside you in some way. But again, I think that's the last thing that they're going to do for a mainline Zelda game is add co-op.
I mean, we barely even touched on that
I
idea. I mean, it's a good idea, though, because that is another key component of these games that mainline Zelda hasn't ever explored, I think. Even in the sense of having that, like, you know, those really kind of half-butted, you know, co-op modes like the Mario games sometimes have, or DK Bonanza.
Yeah.
I don't think Zelda's ever done anything like that, right? Like where a player can control Navi or something. The only exceptions I can think of are the Four Swords games. Four Swords Adventures was amazing.
Yeah, I love those ones.
Yeah, like I forgot how good the GameCube game is. Like I was playing it about a year ago or so, and man, that game is so freaking fun. The downside is it compromised it as a single-player game. So I wonder if there's a balance there where, you know, kind of, you know, where maybe there are team-based elements, but, you know, they could be CPU controlled or human controlled at other points, you know, or not, you know, if you want to or not, I suppose. So do you think, is that something you'd want to see, a more co-op focused Zelda? Or
I would love to. Again, I don't think I can see it for a mainline game, and again, like recently I've been playing Split Fiction, so maybe they do like a co-op spin-off game where one person controls Zelda, one person controls Link, and it's just split down the middle. Like that would be cool, but for mainline, I don't think it would be able to catch the audience. I guess. I guess I don't think people would be too happy if that was the mainline game.
If they do add co-op, I do think it has to be an entirely optional
Yeah,
thing.
I agree.
At least for a mainline game. If they do a spin-off, that's totally fine, of course. But I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I want to play a co-op focused Zelda. Like a game like Split Fiction. Split Fiction, I've only played a little bit of it, but it looks like a really fun game. I had fun with it. I don't know if I want to play a Zelda game like that. You know, like, especially in the open air format, if they continue with that, like a big part of that is like being able to do whatever you want, you know, whenever you want, and having a second player to have to account for and work with.
It could get messy.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of works against that in a sense. But if it's an optional part of the game, that could still be a lot of fun. You know, if someone just wants to drop in or drop out, that could actually be really neat. And having that level of freedom within still the open air gameplay, I think that could work. So, but yeah, Nick, I don't know. I feel like I'm almost more confused what the next Zelda is now based on these comments than I was before, you know?
We're just running around and trying to figure it out. This comment just does not help us at all.
It doesn't. It really doesn't. I do like, though, how, you know, he literally says, I hope you'll imagine these possibilities and look forward to our next Zelda. That's exactly what we're doing. We're imagining the possibilities.
Yeah.
So, chat, let us know what you think. And also, yeah, of our own thoughts and what you think this could mean. Is there another angle we're missing? Is there something else you're envisioning next Zelda could be based on these comments? Let us know by posting in the comments. I would love to hear what you guys think. So with everyone, thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for more discussions and everything else from us here at GameXplain. We'll catch you later. Bye, everyone.